Have you ever been betrayed at the exact moment you thought you belonged? That's what happened to me at Thanksgiving dinner, when my father, in front of my entire family, called me a parasite and told me to get out of his house. The food was still steaming, the turkey still glistening on the table, and my fork was halfway to my mouth when my world shattered. Before I continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more true-to-life revenge and survival stories. And let me know in the comments, what would you have done if your own father humiliated you at the family table? My name is Peggy, and this is how my life unraveled, and how I learned to rebuild it on my own terms. The smell of roasted turkey, candied yams, and spiced pumpkin pie filled the air that evening. I had spent the entire morning basting, baking, chopping, and setting the table while my family lounged in the living room, eyes glued to the football game. My mother, Margaret, occasionally glanced into the kitchen but never once offered to help. My father, John, shouted at the screen like the players could hear him. And my younger brother, Luke? He scrolled endlessly through his phone, smirking at whatever his friends were posting online. I had convinced myself it was worth it. Thanksgiving was about family after all. If it meant I worked harder so everyone else could relax, then maybe, just maybe, they would finally appreciate me. When the food was served and everyone gathered around the table, I tried to lighten the mood. With a nervous smile, I shared some good news. I had just been promoted at work, a step up that came with more responsibility and a raise. For a brief moment, I thought I saw pride in their faces. Then my father put down his fork. His eyes locked on me with a sharpness that made my stomach twist. And then he said it. "You're nothing but a parasite. It's time for you to get out of this house." The words cut through the clatter of silverware, silencing the room. My mother's eyes dropped instantly to her plate, as though the green beans there were the most fascinating thing in the world. Luke smirked and sipped his soda, clearly enjoying the show. Even my aunt, visiting from out of town, froze mid-bite, her fork hovering just inches from her mouth. Me. I sat there, fork in hand, sweet potato casserole trembling on the edge. The food I had cooked, the table I had set, the bills I had paid, all of it suddenly felt foreign, like none of it belonged to me anymore. The irony hit me in waves. 4 months, I had been covering the electric bill, the water bill, even my mother's medical expenses. It was my paycheck that kept the lights on and the fridge full. Yet in front of everyone, my father reduced me to nothing more than a leech at his table. I tried to swallow, but the food turned to ash in my mouth. Around me, silence grew so heavy that even the ticking of the antique wall clock became unbearable. A clock I had paid to repair just last month. I wanted to speak. To defend myself. To shout about the receipts and the bills. To lay bare the truth that I was the only reason this household was still standing. But when I opened my mouth, no sound came out. And then my father's voice again, harsher this time. "Did you hear me, Peggy? By the weekend." I set my fork down, folded my napkin with deliberate calm, and looked straight into his eyes. "I understand perfectly." The words surprised even me. Calm, steady, not the desperate plea he expected. For the first time I saw confusion flicker across his face. But inside something cracked wide open. It was the moment I realized I wasn't part of this family. I was just their resource, their convenience. And starting that night I would no longer play that role. I waited until the house fell quiet. The TV clicked off. Door shut. Old pipes sighed through the walls. In that hush, I began packing with the kind of focus you only find when your heart is numb. 1 suitcase for clothes. 1 small box for documents and electronics. Receipts and statements layered neatly like armor. Halfway through I paused. Something was off. A thin folder I didn't recognize peeked out beneath my tax paperwork. Cream paper, not the usual bright white I buy in bulk. Inside, printed bank statements addressed to John Whitaker, my father. A bank I didn't know he used. And balances that made my breath catch. July, $3,985. August, $5,210. September, $6,742. While I was covering power, water, internet, and our groceries, he was quietly building a stash. There were more clues. A glossy brochure slid out from the same folder and landed on my comforter. Highlands Trail RV and Outfitters. A sticky note in my father's blocky handwriting. Hold for December delivery, 20% down. Ask about towing package. The model circled in blue. A shiny cherry red travel trailer with a queen bed, indoor-outdoor kitchen, and a price that could have paid 3 months of our bills. I sat down, the mattress dipping under the weight of a truth I already knew but hadn't let myself say. I wasn't family, I was funding. On my desk was another stack, my mother's specialist visits. I skimmed the envelopes I'd filed without opening because that's what responsible people do. Pay first, breathe later. The codes weren't primary care. They were elective. Injectable this, resurfacing that. An appointment card with a neat little aftercare note read, "No straws for 48 hours." My jaw tightened. I'd switched to instant coffee and skipped lunches to keep our insurance paid up, so we could afford lip filler. Down the hall, floorboards creaked. I snapped the folder shut and slid it into my tote. My bedroom door opened a crack. "Peg." Luke's voice. "You still up?" I didn't answer. He lingered, then padded away. A minute later, I heard his muffled voice through his door, low and smug. "She'll be gone by the weekend." "Yeah, Dad said he's finally getting the trailer. Garage space'll be perfect once her stuff's out." "Perfect." I zipped my suitcase, checked the corners of my room, then reached under my bed for a shoebox I'd labeled home, proof, receipts, model numbers, serial stickers, the new fridge I bought in July, the mesh Wi-Fi system I installed when the router died, the desk I assembled during lockdown. Every bill since Mom lost her job at the clinic. My name, my card, my signature, lined up in a clean ledger of unpleasant truth. I tucked the box into the tote with the bank statements. In the kitchen, the antique clock I'd paid to repair ticked smugly. The sink glittered, my post-dinner cleanup, while everyone else had drifted back to the game. I filled a thermos with water, then caught sight of the family bulletin board. Underneath grocery coupons, a bright orange delivery window card. December 12th to 20th. Confirm parking access in driveway. The vendor? Highlands Trail. I took a photo. Proof doesn't argue. It just sits there until someone is ready to see it. By morning, a plan had formed, not vengeful, just precise. Cut the lines. Call each utility and remove my name. Quarantine money. New bank, new passwords, new two-factor. Document everything. If they tried to flip the story, the paper would speak. At my lunch break, I slipped into a quiet corner outside the office and dialed the electric company. "I need to remove myself from account hashtag." "Ma'am, are you sure?" the rep asked. "You're the only payer on record." "I'm sure." A few keystrokes and a burden lifted I didn't know I was allowed to put down. Water. Gas. Internet. Same script. Same exhale. When I reached the insurance carrier, I added voice passwords and flagged the account for privacy. The rep lowered her voice. "There were multiple attempts to access your portal last week. We locked them out." Of course there were. On the way home, I stopped at a credit union. No shared history. A clean slate. The banker slid a form across the counter and smiled like this was routine. To me, it felt like resurrection. When I returned, Mom was waiting at the kitchen table with a stack of envelopes positioned like props. "I rescheduled my appointment," she said faintly, "but I'll still need the insurance card on Tuesday." I set my bag down. "You'll need to reschedule again." Her head snapped up. "Excuse me." I took my name off the utilities and secured the insurance. "Going forward, anything elective is your responsibility." Her fingers tightened around the envelopes. "Elective." A pause, then the performative indignation. "You know how your father gets, he didn't mean what he said. He meant it enough to rehearse it." Something flickered in her eyes. Not guilt. Calculation. Before she could pivot, Dad came in, rattling his keys. "You moving your things?" he asked, voice light with false cheer. "Yes." "Good. We'll need the space." He kissed Mom's cheek as if he hadn't detonated our family the night before. I picked up my tote. "You might also need a new power plan by Friday. Your Parasite canceled autopay." The smile froze. His jaw worked. "You can't just abandon. Parasites detach when the host becomes hostile," I said and walked out. Rachel opened her apartment door before I knocked twice. "You're staying here," she said, tugging me into a hug that actually felt like one. Her girlfriend, May, lifted a brow at my overstuffed tote. "You brought your entire life, huh? Good. We love an organized escape." We set my suitcase in their spare room. I plugged in my laptop. Changed passwords. Enabled new authentication. Added alerts. The whole antiseptic ritual of reclaiming a life. My phone buzzed. "Mom, power's out. Internet too." I had to cancel my appointment. How could you do this to us? We're family. I stared at the message until the words lost their shape. Then I typed, family doesn't call me a parasite. Another ping. Dad, return the laptop and camera you took from our house. We're selling a few things to cover what you owe. I laughed out loud, sharp, humorless. May watched me copy serial numbers into a folder titled If They Try Anything. Better put the pawn shops on speed dial, she murmured. Already on it, I said because future me had learned to save receipts. The next morning I was at a cafe near work when the phone rang. Unknown number. Peggy Whitaker? Yes. This is Banner First Bank. We flagged 3 password reset attempts on your checking account in the last 24 hours. Not your IP. My heart rate spiked, then steadied. Please hardlock all changes to in-person only with photo ID. Done, the rep said. Smart move. I ended the call and opened my documentation notebook. Dates, times, names, confirmation numbers. Each line a small sandbag against a flood. My screen lit up again. Luke, Mom says you're being dramatic. Dad says you owe back rent. Also, can you Venmo me $60? My card's maxed and I need gas. I stared at the message, then typed, I'm not your bank. He sent a rolling eyes emoji. Then nothing. By evening I had one more call to make. Highlands Trail RV and Outfitters. Hi, I said cheerful. My father, John Whitaker, asked me to confirm driveway access for a December trailer delivery. We do have a hold, the clerk said. Papers rustled. Deposit made in August. Beautiful model. He's going to love it. Actually, plans have changed, I said. Could you email me the deposit terms? Sure. What's your address? I gave her mine. When the email arrived, I read the fine print twice. Refundable if canceled before delivery window. I sat back and let the irony land. All the lights I'd paid to keep on, replaced by fairy lights on an RV patio my father wanted to post on Facebook. I forwarded the terms to myself and smiled for the first time all day. Not vengeance. Just balance returning to its rightful place. That night the apartment felt gentler. May slid a mug of tea toward me. To clean breaks, she said. Rachel clinked her cup to mine. And to evidence. I lifted my phone and typed a single text to Dad, attaching a photo of the delivery card and the deposit clause. Cancel now, you get your money back. Or keep pretending you can afford luxuries on someone else's paycheck. Either way, my accounts are closed. No reply. Just the quiet hum of a space where my presence wasn't a transaction. If you found proof your family was saving for luxuries while draining you, would you confront them at once? Or cut the lines and let cause and effect teach the lesson? Tell me below. The house was silent when I finally zipped my second suitcase. My room looked bare, stripped of the little touches that made it mine. Posters gone, books packed, even the comforter folded away. What was left felt like a hotel room after checkout. Impersonal, temporary. I glanced at the clock. 1:47 a.m. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator, another appliance I had bought with my own card. I felt a sudden urge to stick a post-it note on it that read property of Peggy, just so no one could pretend otherwise. I moved carefully down the hallway, the wheels of my suitcase muffled by the carpet. When I passed Luke's door, voices carried through. His low, smug tone. My father's gruff chuckle. She'll be gone by the weekend, Luke whispered. Then you'll finally have the space for the trailer. The words sank like ice in my veins. It wasn't just Dad's decision. They were all in on it. I tightened my grip on the handle and kept moving. No tears, no outbursts. Just quiet steps out the front door. Rachel's apartment smelled faintly of coffee and cinnamon when she opened the door, hair tied in a messy bun, eyes wide with worry. You're here, she said, pulling me inside before I could even speak. And you're staying. Behind her, her girlfriend May gave me a small smile. Spare rooms ready. Sheets are clean. Bathrooms stocked. And yes, the Wi-Fi passwords taped to the fridge because Rachel insists on playing hostess. For the first time all week I laughed. A small shaky sound but real. They didn't ask questions. They didn't demand explanations. They simply helped me stack my suitcases in the corner of the spare room and handed me a glass of water. You can breathe now, Rachel said gently. No one's watching you here. I sat on the edge of the bed, the glass trembling in my hand. And for a moment I believed her. By morning, the narrative had already shifted. My phone lit up with missed calls and messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in months. Aunt Marlene, heard you walked out and left your parents without warning. What's wrong with you? Cousin Jared, your dad says you're unstable. Call me if you need help. Grandma's number. I'm so disappointed in you, Peggy. Family takes care of each other. I wanted to scream that I had been taking care of everyone. That every bill, every receipt, every dollar had my name on it. But in their version of the story, I was the selfish one. And my parents? They were already playing the victims. I muted the notifications. Let them gossip. Let them twist it. I had the proof, and someday the truth would surface. For now, I needed peace. That night, as Rachel worked her late shift and May made tea, I sat cross-legged on the bed with my documents spread out around me. Bank statements. Utility bills. Insurance claims. Photos of receipts. My life reduced to evidence folders. I wasn't just leaving a house. I was building a case, for myself, for my sanity, for the life I deserved. And as I stacked the papers neatly into a binder, a thought settled in. I wasn't running away. I was taking back control. The first call was the hardest. I sat at Rachel's kitchen table, sunlight pooling across the wood as I dialed the electric company. I need to remove my name from account hashtag. The rep paused. Are you sure? You're the only payer listed. I'm sure. A few keystrokes and it was done. Just like that, the current running through my childhood home no longer carried my signature. Gas, water, internet. One by one I repeated the process. My voice grew steadier with each call, like I was untangling myself from invisible ropes. By the time I reached my insurance provider, I'd found a rhythm. But the woman on the line said something that stopped me cold. There have been multiple attempts to access your account this week. We blocked them, but you'll want to add extra verification. I closed my eyes. Of course. They weren't just waiting for me to come back. They were already trying to steal what little I had left. The fallout was immediate. By noon, my phone lit up with messages. Mom, the internet's down. I had to cancel my appointment. How could you do this to us? We're family. Dad, return the laptop and camera. We're selling things to cover what you owe. Luke, you're being dramatic. Also, can you Venmo me $40 for gas? I stared at the screen, then typed a single reply to my mother. Family doesn't call me a parasite at Thanksgiving. To my father. Nothing. To Luke, I'm not your bank. I blocked them after that. But they didn't stop. The next morning I got a call from my bank. We flagged 3 password reset attempts from an IP address registered to your home. My hands shook as I took notes. Names, times, confirmation numbers. Each detail went into my binder, which was starting to look less like paperwork and more like a legal case file. That night, Rachel found me hunched over it. Operation Clean Break? She teased softly, sliding a mug of tea beside me. Operation Survival, I corrected. 2 days later, Mom tried a new tactic. She left a voicemail, her voice trembling. Peggy, your father didn't mean what he said. We were upset. Just drop the bills back into your name until we get back on our feet, okay? We'll make it up to you. I played it twice, listening not to the words but to the tone. The same manipulative sweetness she'd used my whole life. This wasn't an apology. It was a sales pitch. I deleted it. When I thought it couldn't get uglier, Rachel's doorbell rang. A delivery driver stood there holding a large envelope. Inside, a pawn ticket. Serial numbers listed. My laptop. My camera. Collateral, they'd called it. For what I owed. I felt heat rise in my chest. They hadn't just tried to drain my accounts. They'd stolen from me outright. But this time I wasn't defenseless. I had receipts, serial codes, purchase dates. I called the police, my voice calm as I explained. Officer Daniels met me at the station later that evening, clipboard in hand. With this documentation, ma'am, it's theft. Plain and simple. We'll contact the shop and recover your items. For the first time in months, I felt the scales tilt in my favor. That night, as I sat on Rachel's couch with May's golden retriever curled against my leg, I realized something. They could smear my name to relatives. They could strip my old room bare. They could even pawn my belongings. But they couldn't take the one thing I'd finally reclaimed. My power. What would you have done? Press charges against your own parents, or walk away and let the loss go? It started with the pounding. Heavy, insistent, rattling Rachel's apartment door so hard the frame shook. Peggy. My father's voice boomed raw with rage. Open this door right now. Rachel froze in the kitchen, mug in hand. May's golden retriever barked, hackles raised. My stomach knotted, but my voice stayed calm. Don't answer, I whispered. The pounding grew louder. You think you can just walk out? You think you can abandon us after everything we've done for you? The words made me laugh bitterly under my breath. Everything they'd done for me? Through the peephole I saw him, red-faced, veins bulging, his hand raised to slam the wood again. His eyes burned like I'd stolen something from him. Maybe I had. My independence. My silence. I dialed 911 with steady fingers. The dispatcher's voice was calm as I explained. Attempted forced entry. Violent shouting. Prior theft of personal property. The banging didn't stop. You're destroying this family, Peggy, he roared. You're making me look like a fool. A neighbor's door opened across the hall. Mrs. Perkins, frail but sharp-eyed, peered out. Young man, she snapped, I've already called building security. My father whipped around, snarling at her. Mind your business, old woman. But her words carried weight. She wasn't just a witness. She was proof that this wasn't a family dispute. It was harassment. By the time the elevator dinged, my father had drawn back his leg and kicked, splintering the wood around the lock. Sir, step away from the door immediately. A security guard's voice rang out. Seconds later, 2 police officers stormed down the hallway. My father spun, hands up, shouting, She's my daughter. I have every right. No, sir, the officer cut in firmly. You have no right to damage property or threaten residents. Turn around. Hands behind your back. The sight of his wrists cuffed behind him was something I never thought I'd see. For years he'd towered over me, larger than life, unchallenged. Now he looked small, furious but powerless. The officer turned to me after taking my statement. Would you like to press charges? My voice shook only slightly. Yes. And I'd like to file for a restraining order. The fallout came quickly. Word spread among neighbors and relatives, not through my father's lies this time, but through witnesses who'd seen him dragged out in cuffs. Aunt Sarah called days later, her voice trembling. Peggy, I had no idea. We all thought you just abandoned them. I almost laughed. That's the story they wanted you to believe. One by one the facade cracked. The narrative shifted. The truth began to surface. But my parents didn't stop fighting dirty. When I returned with Officer Daniels to collect the rest of my belongings, my mother hovered in the doorway, arms crossed. That furniture belongs to this family, she hissed. You can't take everything. I pulled a folder from my tote, receipts, serial numbers, purchase dates. I handed them to the officer without a word. He flipped through the stack and raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, these items were all purchased by your daughter. They're legally hers. For once, my mother didn't have a comeback. She stepped aside, lips pressed tight. The final blow came as I loaded the last box into my car. My father pulled up in my second car, the one I'd left at Rachel's place. He swung the spare key like a trophy. This is mine now, he sneered. I reached into my folder and pulled out the title, registration, and insurance card. All in my name. I didn't even have to speak. Officer Daniels stepped forward. Hand over the keys, sir. For the first time in my life I saw my father truly defeated. His hand shook as he dropped the keys into the officer's palm. Come near me or my property again, I told him, voice clear, and I'll see you back in handcuffs. He said nothing. Just stood there, smaller than I'd ever imagined he could be. 1 year later I set the table again for Thanksgiving, but this time every plate, every glass, every laugh belonged to me. Before we close this story, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories of betrayal, revenge, and rebirth. And tell me in the comments, do you believe family bonds should be forgiven, or broken forever when the trust is gone? My apartment smelled of roasted turkey and cinnamon when I pulled the bird from the oven. The table wasn't big, the dishes didn't match, but it was mine. Chosen, bought, arranged by me. Every chair was filled not with people who drained me, but with friends who'd carried me through the storm. Rachel raised her glass. To chosen family, she said, eyes bright. And to boundaries worth keeping. We all clinked glasses. Even Tessa, my little sister who now lived in a dorm miles away, studying on scholarships I'd helped her apply for. She looked taller somehow, her smile freer. The irony wasn't lost on me. Last year I'd been humiliated at my parents' table. This year I carved the turkey at my own. After dinner, Tessa lingered in the kitchen, stacking plates beside me. They lost the house last month, she said quietly. Dad blames the bank, the neighbors, the government, anyone but himself. They're staying at Uncle Rick's, but he's already hinting they need to find somewhere else. I nodded, rinsing dishes. None of it surprised me. Without my paycheck propping them up, the collapse was inevitable. They still say it's your fault, she added almost apologetically. But, honestly, would have happened anyway. You just stopped delaying it. I dried my hands on a towel. That's the truth they'll never admit. On the shelf sat a small stack of unopened envelopes. 5 letters, all from my parents. I hadn't opened a single one. Sometimes I wondered what they said. Apologies? Demands? Manipulation dressed as concern? I hadn't decided yet if I ever would. That night, when everyone had gone home and the apartment was quiet again, I sat with a cup of tea and stared at the unopened letters. The weight of them pressed against me, not just paper but years of expectation, guilt and control. Forgiveness, reconciliation, cutting ties forever. Each choice felt heavy. But then I looked around at my teal accent wall, at the second-hand table that had hosted real laughter, at the quiet hum of a home entirely mine. And I realized something. Peace doesn't come from their approval. It comes from the boundaries I finally built. 1 year after being called a parasite, I was no longer feeding anyone but myself. The question that remains isn't whether I survived. I did. It's whether I'll ever let them back in now that I've finally found freedom. What about you? If your family betrayed you like mine did, would you open the door again, or keep it locked forever? Let me know in the comments.